Uh, let us start the second section, that is the information technologies and systems. One of the new, or I would say the buzz in the market, or buzz in the financial world and non-financial world: big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence. So this is something that is the new normal for the market. So now this is also incorporated in the ACCA as well, because you know that ACCA is a pretty much adaptive qualification. So we are still on the big data before moving in the majorly information technologies section, and we are moving toward big data. So just have a recap what we have done so far. In the previous session, we had some orientation. We discussed about the type of examination, the section. There are three sections: A, B, and C, and we discussed about how the means majorly each section works, what should be focused, MCQs, how the MCQs depends on the whole syllabus, and then we discussed about what comes in section B and what comes in section C. Then we kicked off the discussion of performance management with the topic of managing information technologies, and we discussed about that every level of management have different appetite regarding uh, their information, and requirement as well for the information, and some requires more of control, some require more of information strategic direction. So accordingly the information systems will depend on the hierarchy from which the information will be tackled. So we discussed about MIS, Management Information System. So we discussed about decision support system. We talked about the decision support system does not give any decision by itself. It just supports your decision by giving out the information, the charts, the Excel file, the information that is required. So in the management information system, we said that it summarizes the key areas that the management wants to see. So we discussed about that. We discussed about ERPs, enterprise resource processes, and another thing we had discussed that we have open and closed information channels, information systems, information environment. So this is pretty basic and pretty like that one should have read the relevant chapter for it. In old scripts, old version of Kaplanets used to be the last chapter or second last chapter, I guess. And the new version I came across that is the initial chapter. So wherever it is, you should go through, and in case you have any query, any problem, you should just buzz me in or just knock, sir, what's going on, where the chapter is. So let's move on to the new area, that is the big data. So as the name implies, big data. Big data is like the cool word for the new era. So actually, it's what it's just telling the word is telling itself that the data is that so large. In the quantifiable term, we know that in every institution, every transaction, if you just take example of very simple norm like Procter and Gamble. So it's a household name. Just think about just a city or a simple a retail shop or a hypermarket. You can assume that there are millions and millions and billions of transactions that are taking place in just as means a pinpoint of a second or a microsecond time period. So what you that information, the flow of information, the flow of data actually talks a lot about and carries a lot of about things about the market or the product, their behavior, the means assumptions you can make in order to project into the future. So data carries a lot of behavior, a lot of information, and once data is formulated, it results into information. So we know that And right now in the world, data is quite in a very much quantum. It's fast. In some scenarios, it's very complex. It's difficult or impossible to process using the traditional methods. You cannot imagine that you will be entering each and every transaction in an Excel sheet by hand, and then you would be trying to grasp any trend out of that Excel sheet. That will be a really difficult task. So new problem requires new solutions. So big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning is a new norm, is a new solution. The act of accessing and storing large amount of information for analytics has been around for a long time, but the concept of big data gained momentum in the 2000s when I would say the millennials especially, that started listening about things like, so there are a few jargons we use very frequently, like startups, like big data, like crypto, like these are all the jargons of 2000s. So when the market establishes with the new softwares like Python and other means coding languages has developed, so these things have gained momentum. So in big data there are three natures that is considered. Actually, and if we consider the current literature, it's there are 5 V's, but the most common or most examinable one are 3 V's. That is the volume, velocity, and variety. We know that in big data deals with all these three, and these are the nature, these are the characteristics of big data. So organization collect data from variety of sources, including transactions, smart IoT devices, industries, equipment, videos, images, audio, social, blah blah, means every transaction, every app, there is a data. There is data, lot of data. So obviously there is a lot of volume when it comes to big data. Velocity, as I talked about, that meanwhile I'm talking with you, there would be several million or billions of people would be using the same software that I'm using right now. There are millions and billions of people would be accessing internet at the same time. So just imagine that if I just talk about just Google would be collecting so much of our data, the velocity, the things have steamed up. So with the growth of Internet of Things, data streams into business at an unprecedented speed and must be handled timely manner. You can imagine that previously that used to be in various organizations, that used to be an attendance sheet everyone has to sign. Now it has been replaced by RFIDs tags or sensors. You can imagine of that we used to swap cards in the machine. Now we just use to tap cards on the machines to make payments in order to just make it quick. So on one side we are making it quick, on the other hand we are increasing the velocity of data as well. So variety, when it comes to different formats, different in the, some are in the audio version, some are in the video version, some data is in the email version, some data is just in the visual charts version. So there are various characteristics and variety of data as well, and as well as the sources of data has a various variety. So the variety can measure from the means it can be from the Excel sheet. You can get the data from television. You can get the data from different geographical regions. So variety depends on various things. So when it comes to data, then these are the two very known or very common sense based definition. That in big data we are while you will be dealing two sort of data. One is the structured data, other is unstructured data, and you guys can imagine what does the structured mean and the unstructured mean. Structured mean when you have defined the limits in a way that there is a rule in a way for the data, that you have tagged the data, or there is means there are structured or defined limits and limits outcomes, and you know that 2 plus 2 is equal to 3. You made this data that whenever there are two decimals, and it will be resulting into a summation. So in simple scenario, you just have defined the rule of thumb, and the data is structured in that manner. So if we go to through the definition, this data is stored within the defined fields, numerical text. That it can be numerical, it can be text, it can be anyone, often with defined length within a defined record in a file. Similar record structured data requires a model of the types and format of the business data that will be recorded, and how the data will be stored, processed, and accessed. This is called a data model. So in short, that how this structured data will be structured is one thing, and how it will be saved, processed, and accessed, it's a different thing. So it's a complete model to utilize to structure out the data. So that model is known as, that means we generally know this structure is known as the data model. Designing the model defines and limits the data that can be collected and stored, the processing that can be performed on it. This is just a verbal thing that I just read it out. So in short, structured data is data that is defined. An example of a structured data is found in the banking systems, which is record the receipt and payment from a current account. Means whenever the data, for example, if you guys are having are doing ACCA, you guys have done the management accounting questions and the means the course as well. So we always know that when there is a amount to be deposited in the bank, it will be credited in the bank account, and when we will draw, it will be a debit. So structure of data has been divided, that whenever there will be a deposit in the bank account of Talaha, so it will be a credit or the debit. So it's an example of structured data. So what is an unstructured data? Information does not have predefined data model. We do not have defined the predefined data model. In this sort of scenario, what we are saying that there is data, there are irregularities. Now let the system, the machine learning system itself, try to identify the linkages between certain amount of data. For example, there was an interesting case study that while Pampers was trying to establish their brand, so they found a correlation between the sales of the drinks and the sale of Pampers. So how they came across that, they found a trend that at whenever people return from office at 6 p.m, usually at every network, or if you're a married guy and you're watching this video, so you can imagine that when you are exiting from the office, there's a norm that your wife will call you and say that bring something like that. So that is means a very common norm, and usually when you enter into a superstore, you will buy a drink and the thing that has been asked for. So they found that every second person entering in the store buys a drink and then goes to the dapper section. So what they did, they just brought the dapper section, a counter of it near to the refrigerator. So it, according to the case, I think that there was a 15% increase in the sales in the store. So what they have defined, they just let the model talk. Otherwise, no one can imagine that how come a cold drink and the dapper can be correlated. So it's an interesting scenario when it comes to unstructured data, and it's machine learning, and it's when you go toward the analytics and artificial intelligence on the unstructured data, you will get various sort of combination that is not already defined. So just you guys just need to have the concept of it. Okay, there are certain jargons as well that when it comes to big data, there's a term that is very much known as a data mining. So the example I gave was of data mining. Data mining is simply analyzing the data to identify pattern, establish a relationship such as association where several events are connected. I give the example to you of that diapers and of cold drink. Predictive analytics are a type of data mining which aims to predict future events. For example, the chance of someone being persuaded to upgrade a flight. So it's just a predictive event in a sense that if it's a sort of analytics that tackles with the behavior. That, for example, if I'm boarding a flight and I got a chance to upgrade my economy class to economy plus or business class, so there is a very much possibility that I will go for it until and unless I just don't want, or I pissed off that I just want to sleep on my seat, or my lucky number in which my existing seat is. Otherwise, out the predictive analytics will show that the behavior would be very much optimistic towards when it comes to upgradation of seats. Then there is a topic regarding text analytics. It's regarding the scanning of text, emails, word processing documents to extract the useful information, to have the and to establish behavioral links and other links in order to judge the nature. Voice analytics, as the term depicts, it depends upon the audio, and the statistical analytics used to identify trends, correlation, changes in behavior. So these are certain means jargons of this area. So, and then okay, now why we are doing this, why we are discussing big data in the current scenario? Because we as management accountants, we as decision maker, we as performance manager need to devise a system, need to correlate between how the data is collected and how we will be going toward analyze the data. So this is majorly big data plays a very big role in collection of your data and help you analyzing the nature of the data, and then it frankly will support your other analysis like variance and other analysis that other we usually do in similar scenario. But the big data supports or make your system more efficient in that manner. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? Majorly we have read through the advantages so far. I'm just saying you can have very obnoxious sort of relationships in between data, you can identify that, but on the hand side there is a lot of cost involved. It's really expensive to establish a hardware and software and hire people's intelligent like you guys are. So it's a really difficult task for an entity to establish a big data hub or machine learning softwares. That was quite difficult. In addition, in some countries and culture worry about the amount of information that is being collected. You would know that in not in the very near future, near past, means a year back or so, Mark Zuckerberg was being investigated and was called in front of the lawyers, and they were asking somehow to what extent you collect information. And also nowadays it's become quite a norm, and we also whenever we use our mobile phones, certain apps, we become very careful that they would be collecting information. So that is now getting more and more regulated on day basis. Then loss of and theft of data, that is another reason that your data can be utilized by those guys that you don't want to. Incorrect veracity, this is another V actually. Veracity is that if the data is held incorrect or out of date, incorrect conclusion are likely to made. For example, you just entered means in certain environment there has been a fake invoicing or fake sales has taken place, and now our data mining guy is trying to gauge a relationship that okay, in the month of September there used to be much of sales, but it's the correlation made is wrong because the data is wrong, so the analytics will be wrong, so everything will be wrong if there will be a wrong data, incorrect data, and incorrect correlation would be based. Okay, employee monitoring is important in this such an data collection method allow employee to be monitored in a detail in every second of the day. Some companies place sensors in the name of badges to the employees' movement. I hate my supervisors who actually pinpoint me in everything, and I'm very much sure if they are watching this lecture of mine, so they would know it already. That if there is any such especially ex supervisors, I would say that if someone pinpoints you and someone keep looking at your work and why you're late to the desk and all, and that impacts the productivity, that impacts the way you think. So it's the major cost is that when there is lot of supervision, lot of sensors, lot of means nitty-gritties involved in every step, then it can result in what lack of motivation, efficiency would reduce, and there can be a veracity as a result of it, because the employee can result in means wrong information, or wrong information would be punched. So so this is the bad part of the technology as well. Okay, now let's move on some of the case studies. There is a complete link on performance management and big data, and the article was published in Student Accountant. So as a ACCA student, you should always focus on the area that you should always focus on Student Accountant. Their articles, there is it's a glimpse actually what the examiner is trying to will be trying to ask in the examination. So you already become hands-on. So there are 5-6 case studies in that lecture, in that article. I just selected two of that because I found that interesting. You would be knowing that Tesco is one of the supermarket group in America and US. What they did, they put sensors were placed in the fridges, and they were just collecting data for what? Temperature of fridge. And they found that the required temperature range is 21 degree to 23 degrees recommended, but certain refrigerators were cooling at like minus 15, minus 17. So obviously this cooling requires a lot of energy. So what they collected, that from that information, that we don't require this much of cooling, we are fine with 21 to 23 degree minus Celsius. It's fine to have that range. So by virtue of that, those sensors, they collected the data of the temperature and the refrigerator, and they resulted in expected reduction in 20% cost saving. That was a significant saving in that. The system also allowed the engineers to monitor the performance of the fridges remotely, and I think so this is now something that we all have in our apps as well. For like certain inverter refrigerators can be accessed through your mobile phones and apps. When they identified a particular unit was malfunctioning, they could analyze the problem and visit the store and the right parts and replace them. So this will reduce also your means perishability of good. So in this sort, in this overall, the data has been collected in an unstructured form, then it has been structured, and it resulted in a decision making, and there was an analysis, whole of which involved. So this is one of the application of big data. Another that I found it very much interesting, that the Martin's Steakhouse. So Martin's Steakhouse is one of the known steakhouses joints in US. And what happens that one day, one of the customer of Martin's Steakhouse tweeted and on obviously on Twitter that his flight got delayed. He's sitting in the waiting area of the means airport, and he wanted to just he joked that to send him a dinner in the Dan area. So he just tagged the owner in that means tweet. So what the guy did, what the owner, the Martin's owner did, he himself found a tweet. He saw a marketing means chance out of it. So he talked to the waiter, he talked to the airport officials, and they went to the and served them the dinner before the flight. And it was such a sudden activity, and they utilized it for their marketing campaign, that we value our regular customers so much, and if you are starving for our steak and you love so much, we love you also, to that extent that we can reach out for you in the airport. So just imagine the fact that Twitter is one of the sources of data. That data has been analyzed by the modern steakhouse out of the pool and make a marketing campaign out of it. So clearly this action was a publicity stunt. The restaurant hoped that their customer would publicize in their future. Obviously, if I would be the guy getting a free steak at the airport, I would love to do so. What it demonstrates is how easy it was for Martins to identify the customer who sent the tweet and to ascertain what his favorite meal was. It was simple, a link between a data and the reaction. It also shows how companies like to influence social media users. I'm quite sure while I'm reading this through and explaining you, I'm becoming excited, and you would be also knowing that, oh wow, such and such things have taken place to other people, why not us? So it is difficult to measure the impact of intervention into the social media. No doubt the happy customer would be communicated as the story. So in short, big data refer to this extract is also from out means majorly from the website, out of the student accountant, how they are defining it. Big data refer to the large collections of data that may be analyzed to reveal the pattern, trend, association, especially relating to human behavior. I'm all along the lecture I'm saying it's talk about the behavior interaction. Big data has already been explained in other article. You can see there is an article link in that. I will share these links with you after the lecture. The use of a big data performance and measurement for the performance and measurement purposes can be used. Performance measurement involve managing the organization in order to ensure the meets the objective. Broadly, I'm just reading this out because I feel this is very much important, as it's mentioned in the student accountant. So I'm just trying to be sure that each and every word has been read out and conveyed to you guys. Broadly, big data is relevant to the performance management in the following ways. This is really important. If there is a question come, how big data can facilitate you gaining insights, forecasting better, automating the high level of business processes, lawyer scanning documents, which may lead to organization becoming more efficient. So providing more detailed and up-to-date performance measurement. So when it comes to the big data, we have done it. And for the information system and technologies, we have covered a lot of part of it. I would suggest that read it through. We can revisit at the end of the lectures, we will be completing the whole of the syllabus, but I don't want to budge a lot into this, and that will consume a lot of our time. So that's it till the information technologies and the system and managing information. For further information related lecture, we will be revisiting this area again if needed at the end of our syllabus.